Oops. Welcome to What's the Effort?
What the F?
Hello, everyone. Hello, and welcome. Welcome. Today, I'm very, very honored to have Rory DeSilva sharing the stage with me. I'm super stoked about that. And I want to say thank you. Thank you for coming on.
Oh, thank you, Effie. Thanks for the invite.
Well, you're very welcome. So those of you who may not know, or maybe I'll wait for just a second. Hey, guys, a little hint. If you ever have a podcast, make sure your guests come early because Rory did. And he did really good in coming early. And I had a human error on my end, which both Rory and I were stressing it was on his end until Rory used common sense and had me check out a couple things. And it all started fine. But it's a good idea to have your guests arrive a little early in case you, if it's your podcast like me, does something silly. So thank you very much for being here with us. And I think many people who might come today may know you because when you meet people, you do make an impression. There's no doubt about it. But at the same time,
hopefully a good one.
yes, absolutely a good one. And how did that happen? Okay. But I will say that you're also a little bit quiet. So for those who may not that might not, oh, hey, we've got Jim here. Woohoo! I think this is the first time I might have pulled up his name. Hey, Jim. Nice to see you.
Hey, Jim.
Okay, for those of you who may not know Rory yet, he is a little bit on the quiet side. And I'm going to say that this represents a little bit of Rory, and I'll ask him to explain why. Okay, so this is his last name, Rory DeSilva, and I'm going to say Yachty.
Not bad. Okay.
A Canuck and a future Yankee. So can you explain a little bit of that to us? Like, what the heck is that about?
Yeah, and I'll maybe touch on this in the background. So Yachty is like just a slang for Jamaican, local Jamaican, Canuck, Canadian slang, and then Yankee, American. So just a few highlights on my background, having been born and raised here in Jamaica, lived in the US for a few years, and also Canada, and now back home in Jamaica.
Okay, so tell us, you grew up there. Did you go to university there too?
Yeah, so all my schooling was done here in Jamaica. Graduated from university, started working in finance in Jamaica, and things are going well. So no complaints. Everything. I was working as a trader in finance, getting some opportunities to grow. And then in 2015, had the opportunity to migrate to the US, which I decided to take. So that's what kind of led me to the Yankee side of things.
Did you move to the States before Canada?
Yes, I was living in the States first. 2015, moved to New York, bounced around a bit, so lived in a few different cities, Brooklyn, Long Island, and then moved up to Connecticut, lived in a few cities there, then got married in 2018, and my wife at the time was living in Canada, so moved over to Canada, spent some time there, and then moved back to the US, in Florida, and then now back to Jamaica.
Okay, so in 2018 you got married. Did you get married in
Yeah.
Jamaica, or did you get married in the States, or in Canada, or where?
In Jamaica. So we had the ceremony in Jamaica, and then we
She's
went through all the
Jamaican too,
filing.
right?
Correct. Yeah. So we met back in university, studied the same degree, which was actuarial science. So we both love numbers. I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing, but
I think
we
it's
bonded
great.
on we bonded on numbers, and she's a lot smarter than I am, and she kind of tricked me when we were dating. Like she kind of pretended that she needed tutoring, and when the grades came out, she was getting like A pluses, and I was just like A's, and she was just like, "Oh yeah, I guess the tutoring worked," but that was part of the strategy there.
Oh, that is hysterical. She lured you in your ability to help her while she
Yeah.
was already. I love it.
Where
I love
I probably needed the help from her. So
it. Can you imagine being in her boat? You would have been like, I know that's silly. Okay. In your own head, right? That's awesome. So then you started off on the stock in the stock board in Jamaica. And when you moved to the States, what were you doing the first time?
yeah, so the intention was moving to New York, right? At the time being in finance, you always think about Wall Street, right? As a trader. So it was a very interesting experience, job hunting, like taking a train, going to all these interviews. And I quickly found out that the finance scene, especially in New York, is very close-knit, where you have to come from a certain business school, right? That's kind of like the filtering process into Wall Street. So I started looking outside of finance, looked into insurance jobs and stuff, just something to keep me going and to get some, some income coming in. So led me to insurance at first. So I was doing lots of door knocking, sales, all this stuff. And I nowhere
What
near
kind
at
of
the time I
insurance?
was, so it was life insurance to start.
Oh,
And yeah,
did you
and
ever do whole? Did you ever do whole life?
so we had some whole life policy stuff, not as much in terms of like the infinite banking and that type of stuff. So it was more your traditional whole life policies. We also did some health insurance after that was another product I started selling. But it taught me a lot about sales. Before that, I was more, even as a trader, I had to network and I had to maintain client relationships, but it was more behind a screen, like more desk work. But going into insurance sales, now you're like door knocking, pounding the pavement, cold calling, all that type of stuff. So it really opened my eyes to the world of sales, I would say.
Did it come to you naturally, or did you have to work
No,
at it?
no, none whatsoever. While I was doing the sales job, I was studying for my actuarial exams, which is, something else I was looking into. So I was balancing the two. So I was doing sales on the weekends or the nights, and then studying for the actuarial exams, and then eventually landed a job in the actuarial space. But I still stuck to sales. Like I kind of, after a while, I got used to it, and I like the fact that there's no limit to your earning potential, right? Like what you put in is what you get out. So even though I got a full-time job working in the actuarial space, I was still selling on the weekends,
Wow.
evenings after work, just to kind of have that additional income coming in.
Right. And is this before you got married or after?
Before, yeah. So this was maybe back in 2016. Yeah,
Okay.
2016. So
Okay.
after moving to New York and then transitioning to Connecticut, yeah, balancing the two.
So once you got married, did you go to Canada right away?
Yes, in a few months, it was a lot easier than the US process. So it was just a couple months, and I was able to move over to Canada, and then that's where the whole well part or most of the real estate journey kind of started during that transition. I was doing some real estate in the US before I moved, but it was more part time. I was bird dogging for some investors, so going out, taking pictures, videos of properties. That was kind of how I got started in real estate. And then the transition to Canada, I had the opportunity to work full time at that point to really grow my understanding and just absolutely get consumed by real estate. I was listening to podcasts when I was working out or on the train or in the car, and it's just from then just been a crazy passion that's really grown.
So, when you moved to Canada, who did you work for in real estate, or was it for yourself?
No, so I had a good friend of mine. She got into cryptocurrencies at a pretty early age. So she made quite a return and then she started dabbling in real estate. So I came in to learn as well as to help her grow. So she had some real estate experience and she also had people who had on her staff who had real estate experience. It was kind of good for me to learn from them as well as to help out where I can. So I was pretty strong with numbers. So I came in to help with like underwriting, spreadsheet, calculations and things like that. And yeah, building the relationship. So we were managing all the projects were still in the US. So
Oh,
we're doing stuff in
so
like
this lady was
Ohio.
in Canada, but her real estate was in
Correct.
the States?
Yeah.
Was she
So it
also
was
an American, or is she like just
no Canadian. Yeah,
oh,
Canadian. So she was
okay.
investing as a foreign national. So it was Ohio was one of the markets. Atlanta was another market, and then pockets in Florida are also a few markets that we're looking at.
So then did you do it virtually?
Yeah, yeah. So virtually.
Interesting.
So building teams, finding subcontractors, agents,
All
inspectors,
virtually.
appraisers, all virtually.
Huh.
Would have to travel. So like would go back and forth. I would like go to Atlanta for a while. Eventually I ended up living in Atlanta for about a year. Um, but yeah, it was virtual. It was virtual. So it was definitely not the easiest way to go about it, but tons of learning lessons. There are things that I learned through that process that I'm still implementing now. Also being virtual now, being back in Jamaica and having to do business in Florida. So yeah, it helped a lot.
I'm sure it did. I'm sure it did. I know for a fact, because when we first met, we met when you were doing the self storage
Yeah.
Zooms that are in the vault. You were working for a self storage company. When did that
Yeah.
happen? Like, and it was Canadian, wasn't it?
Yeah, so the owners were Canadian, or the owner is Canadian. He and his family moved to the US. So they were residing in the US, and the company structure was part US, part Canadian. So he had partners who were American citizens. I think that also helped with regards to like financing and navigating certain challenges. But yeah, storage was a very insightful experience. We did developments, so my role coming into the company was helping to build out the acquisitions team, how to source land, the entitlement process, so everything from finding the land to closing would be on my desk. So liaising with zoning departments, commercial brokers, GCs for bids. Engineers, yeah, the whole 9 yards. So it was very busy but very educational. Learned a ton. Still a lot more to learn in developments, but it was very eye-opening. Having that experience. I had a great team. Still keep in touch with the owner and that team. Really good guys. So yeah, it was fun. So that's when I moved back to Florida, which
Now, were you
was
doing when you
last
were
year.
doing that acquisition? Were you in Canada when you started working for this guy, this company, or were you back in Florida?
What's funny, I got connected to him through a mutual friend in a mastermind. And I had two phone calls. I'd never met the guy in person, just had two phone calls. He kind of explained what his vision was and what he wanted to accomplish. And from those two phone calls, I moved to Florida. So it was pretty
Wow.
Pretty, yeah, interesting because I don't know, it's just a feeling when there's this opportunity that you want to be a part of. And thankfully my wife was, also accommodating to allow me to just get up and move to another country.
So did
Um,
she stay in Canada or did she go
yeah,
with?
she was in Canada at that point. And then eventually she moved back to Jamaica, and then that made the commute a bit easier for me flying from Florida to Jamaica. And then eventually, I always wanted to move back to Jamaica long term, and I found a way to accomplish that goal, which led me to move back. So yeah, lots of planning and strategy, I guess, in
Yes.
terms of living conditions and everything, but it was worth it. It was worth
Yeah.
it.
And like Josh said, a man of many talents. I mean, being able
Oh,
to
hey,
move
Josh.
around. Yep, yep.
Yeah.
Being able to jostle things and move around in different positions, that is a bit of a skill.
Yeah.
So that is interesting. Now, I still want to do self storage at some point. So I
Mhm.
know that that, and hopefully we can do something of in self storage, and you have those skills very much under your belt. But you were also doing wholesaling when you were in Florida too, right? You did a little bit of wholesaling on the
Yeah.
side.
Even I think as far back as Canada. So I started wholesaling when I was living in Canada, working with a few different companies as well as my own personal wholesaling. So markets like the DMV, that's one of the first. Well, New Jersey was the first market, then the DMV, and then started doing some stuff down in Florida. So yeah, it was also, I think it's just the sales aspect that kind of attracted me to it because I still had a full-time job,
Hmm.
but I could wholesale on the side, earn extra income, and kind of use that to reinvest into other things. So it was definitely something that attracted me to it.
Okay. Um, you were having pretty good success in self storage, but what made you decide? And don't blame me.
No promises.
What made you decide that you wanted to return to Jamaica?
Yeah. So, um, the developer I mentioned I was working with, he hosts this mastermind where it's about for Canadians to help expose them to the US, investing in the US, real estate in the US. And we were at this mastermind that he was hosting, and it was in Canada, up by Lake Muskoka. So it was a cabin or a cottage on the lake, nice area. It's just, a really good event. And after the event was done, part of that mastermind, I had to present about using VAs, right? So I trained basically a team of VAs in the Philippines to break apart the development process into certain roles. So like one VA would be in charge of like pulling self-storage rates, occupancy, all that kind of stuff. The other one would be verifying zoning. So it's like taking the role into smaller parts and then training each on that where they just hone in and specialize on those aspects of the acquisition process. And we did well. I think in the first 10 months we generated like over 1.6 million in assignment fees from
Wow.
assigning entitled storage sites. So it kind of opened my eyes to then start thinking, hey, if VAs in the Philippines could do this, people in Jamaica could do this. So it kind of got me started to think about how I can, help back home, which led me to eventually say, hey, this is something worth pursuing, where Jamaica is one of the largest countries in the Western Hemisphere that are natural, like English is our first language, right? So not many people know that. And we're also
What do
culturally,
they
we're
think
very
is your
similar.
first language? I always thought
What's that?
Jamaican. I
No,
always
in
thought.
terms of size,
Oh,
So
I see
lots
what you
of
mean.
people, yeah, they might not think of Jamaica because we're maybe like around 3 million people. But when you think about the other big countries in the Western Hemisphere, they're
Mhm.
mainly speaking Spanish or other languages. So from the size of the country, along with English as our native tongue, that puts us in a very unique position. So the idea was whether it's development, whether it's wholesaling, I just knew there was something that I could help with providing employment opportunities back home. Since we could do it remotely, like, we could wholesale remotely or do acquisitions remotely, whatever the case is. So it eventually led me to say, hey, I'm looking to move back and we're doing some negotiations. But ultimately, I wanted it to be something that I could start and grow in the vision that I had in mind. Um, and yeah, it just happened where the opportunity presented itself, and I just said, yeah, let's go. So having moved back in September, lots of learning about just registering a business here locally, opening the office, staffing, like all these different things kind of came all at once, and I was just like, okay. So one thing I think looking back is just I think I've put myself in uncomfortable positions just to grow, like to stretch myself, whether it's moving to another country. Like when I moved to New York, I was starting back from scratch, didn't have a car, basically on the couch for most of the time by my uncle's house. And it's just putting yourself or being willing to like kind of get uncomfortable just so that you can further the goals that you have in mind, right? So yeah, it's been busy, it's been hectic, it's been crazy being back, but I love it. Like being here, being able to give back and it has really opened my eyes as well to how many opportunities are here locally. I know you mentioned FA about self-storage. That's something that I'm looking into even here locally where there's such a huge need and people haven't fully realized the opportunity here locally for storage and warehousing. So that's something I've already identified on that side.
Yeah, it is kind of interesting when you live in one country and then you realize, oh, there's some things that I could take back, from
Yeah.
this country to another, even with Canada and the US, which a lot of people think is the same country or there's no differences. There are no differences, but of course there are.
Yeah, many.
And yeah, and it is interesting that how that can happen up a market in a different area. And most of the people that are here probably already know that we met through Mastermind and also the Sub2 Canucks group, which was is a nice little group that helps Canadians that want to do Sub2 in Sub2. And I think that from that, we started talking about what your vision was.
Yeah.
And it's interesting to me that a lot of people want to go back to where they grew up. That's where the roots are. But yours wasn't just about going back, it was improving what is there. And I think that was one of the reasons that I myself was very drawn to your mission of what it is you want to do. And when we first started talking about working together, the concept of doing VAs, which we did a little bit of, and then more recently pivoted to wholesaling. And as I announced, and as you announced, we've done a few of them now. So this is very exciting for us both. And it is a little bit interesting to see how do you work with someone who's not in the country, and what does it involve? And there is a lot of trust that has to happen because it's not particularly easy, and we haven't seen each other since we actually opened our entity.
Yeah.
So it's kind of interesting to see the challenges. So all of that I think is very interesting. And I would never have imagined that that's something that I would be interested in supporting, least of all supporting, so that part didn't make me feel the least bit uncomfortable. I've always been super comfortable with you, who you are. But it is a little bit of just a little surprise that I am helping you in a very real way to reach your goals. And let's face it, it's still going to make money. let's not get that wrong. It's not a nonprofit, but the fact that it's your dream, and it's been a lot of fun to see what you want to do with it and how it's going, and when you decide to do a little bit of um, a pivot. Could you tell the audience, what is JamVest? Let's talk about JamVest. And I know that you're on IG, so this is his handle, guys, on JamVest on IG. You should go ahead and follow him. It's interesting. Can you talk to us a little bit about JamVest, and then a little later let's talk about Hummingbird Construction and just what you're doing?
Yeah, no, it's a good question there. So, JamVest was the company I created. Even when I was wholesaling part-time, that was always the brand and the vision there. So it's been around for a while. But then most recently when I moved back, I had registered here locally. So JamVest is really about Jamaicans being a part of real estate investing. Initially, it was just to provide employment opportunities, but since returning, I've also seen the need for education. So lots of Jamaicans, they think real estate investing is just like building high-rise like apartment buildings or commercial projects, right? So it's the basics of like fix and flips or buy and holds or like more single-family investing. It's a bit foreign to them, and it's just because of how long transactions take here locally, right? So
Oh,
people only think about commercial investing. So
so does that mean that if
Mhm.
somebody's going to buy a home, it takes longer than it normally does in the States, let's say?
Yeah, so if you're using financing here, it could take anywhere from 4 to 6 months to close a transaction.
Oh,
If it's cash and you have, the right connections, then it could be like a month. But it's definitely a more it's definitely a more tedious process to go through. And that's something where I'm now speaking to, real estate attorneys and other people here locally to try and figure out like what exactly is holding up the process. And there are a few things that we've identified. But overall, lots of Jamaicans, they don't know as well that you can actually own real estate in the US or wholesale virtually and all these different real estate strategies. So bringing the awareness of what the options are here in Jamaica for Jamaicans for them to invest in real estate has been another goal of mine. So that's going well. So started putting out more social media content that's educational, geared towards you know, teaching Jamaicans how to be a part of the whole real estate investing space. Um, the other part of Jambis, I would say, is really creating opportunities for them to invest. So, for example, if we have a fix and flip deal in Port St. Lucie and we might be looking to do a fundraise, that's something that's on my to-do list to kind of structure a vehicle that they could invest in, and then the funds are used to do that project. And then as well as employment opportunities, right? As we mentioned, whether it's VA services or helping them to find different roles within the real estate space to earn an income. That's also another thing. So I'd say the three main things: investment opportunities, employment opportunities, and educational services for Jamaicans is what JamVest would be about.
so I think I might have said this once before, but I'm not sure, or if I just thought it. So
Go.
then, might you possibly be the Pace Junior of Jamaica?
I don't know if I want to go as far as Space Junior, but I am I'm doing what I can to bring the awareness. One thing I have to applaud Pace on is just a sense of community, right? So I think that when I just moved back, being in the US, you could go to real estate meetups, whether it's sub two or just, a RIA club or anywhere. In Jamaica, it's not like there isn't really a space to talk about real estate investing. So that also forced me to start trying to put something together where people could come together and just discuss real estate. So that's something I'm slowly working on organizing. But
That's a
yeah,
lot.
community. Yeah, it's definitely, and that's the thing. I have to be strategic with how time is being spent. So right now, my main focus is, wholesaling the business operation to get that to where it needs to be before diverting any attention to, you know, um, other additional opportunities, right? Because yeah, time is very limited. So yeah, but to your point as well regarding Jamvest, it's grown. It's definitely more than a passion project for me. I think this is more of a legacy project that I want this to be something that I can pass down to my kids and have them, take over from there. Because the overall vision that I have for the company is being able to provide opportunities where Jamaicans don't have to migrate, right, to earn an income or get those types of job opportunities.
Mhm.
We're ranked number 2 in the world in terms of brain drain, which is just the percentage of educated Jamaicans that leave or migrate for other opportunities. We have the most outward migration than any other country. I think the only country ahead of us is like Samoa, which is just the island.
Wow.
So yeah,
That's
it's a
there's
big
such a
problem.
complaint about that in Canada, right? About brain drain to the States, especially for
Mhm.
doctors, right? So a lot of Americans might not really know that term per se because, um, you know, who leaves the States when they've got their education? Not that
Yeah,
many. More people want to stay. It is the land of opportunity. I mean, you were born in Jamaica, you've worked in Canada. I was born in Greece, grew up in Canada, yet we're both here. And anything wrong at all with our other countries? It's that this is where the opportunities are, even though with it comes some challenges, right?
yeah.
As a Canadian, I've always said that if I could just fix two things, it'd be perfect in the States, gun control and the medical, you know. But yeah,
Good luck.
I know. Trust me, I just accept it. But
Yeah,
um, you know, what can I say? I mean, there's so many positive things, in the states that people do leave, and then when they have, usually around the time they have kids, they start thinking, "Oh, wait, do I want them, you know, to not have my
to grow.
culture background?"
Yeah.
So, oh, we have a fellow Canuck here. Hi, Daniel.
Hey, Daniel.
Nice to see you. So it is interesting to see that is kind of a problem anywhere around the states. People want to come in. I mean, that's why they have an issue with the borders.
Yeah.
That sort of thing. Absolutely. Um, and if you're born here, that's considered a real gift to be able to have your citizenship. Yep. And thank you again, Daniel. Tell me a little bit about Jam. I love the name, by the way, Jam Vest. It's so cool. It's so cool.
Hmm.
Very nice indeed. Um, what? Oh, no, not that one. This one. Sorry. It's funny. Uh, Tell us a little bit about what hummingbird is, because that's
Yeah.
another one of your. This man has a lot of talents, guys. He does not keep still very long.
Yeah, so hummingbird construction came about when I was in Florida. I had met some partners who are also Jamaican, and one was a licensed GC, but he's been building in the US for about 23 years. The other was also in the real estate space, coming from more of an agent brokerage space. So we all kind of came together, had an idea to start doing some more projects together from the real estate investment side, specifically new construction. So that's what kind of birthed Hummingbird. And the hummingbird, or the doctor bird, is Jamaica's national bird. So that's where the
The
name kind of
hummingbird
came
or the
in.
what?
Yeah. Well, we call it the doctor bird, but it's like a
Doctor.
type of doctor bird. So it's like a type of hummingbird.
Oh,
So that's like our national bird.
oh,
And that's what led to that company being created. So we're working on projects right now, and it perfectly aligned with the other goals, like wholesaling, for example, which is really just deal sourcing. We can use that vehicle to source opportunities for fix and flips. and things of that nature. So it aligned well with the overall vision. And again, having Jamaican partners where we could also show people back home, like, hey, we're all Jamaican, still doing business in the US, XYZ. So it helps to kind of break down any misconceptions. So I think there's definitely something that's a way to kind of bridge the gap between the two, in terms of just what's possible as Jamaicans and what we can achieve. So yeah, it's been pretty fun. We're growing that team, so we're looking to get into some multifamily stuff later this year. I am not trying to take on too many things at once. So I've been playing matchmaker where some of the relationships I have on the commercial side, connecting them with the team on Hummingbird and just having them keep pushing things along. And then, I'll also help out and be involved. But yeah, time time is
Time is,
a very big
yeah, very
factor.
much so.
Yeah.
Very much so. And Josh is picking up on what I picked up. Love that you're
Nice.
doing
Thanks,
that
Josh.
for your community. Uh, you know, um, Community is really important, and
Yeah.
you're not chasing just the dollar. You're actually looking to. If you were chasing the dollar, you probably would have just stayed here.
I
You
would have
know,
probably still been in finance
yeah,
because it was a good paying, but it wasn't fulfilling. It was just, yeah, there was nowhere near as much passion or just alignment as it has been with real estate. I haven't found anything else that comes close.
yeah. There is a lot to be said for finding a place and that seems to be unloved and doesn't really have anyone caring for it, and then finding, either a fix and flipper that's going to give it the love and change it into something, or if it's not all that bad, the family that moves in and that will improve as much as they can. There is a lot to be said about that. And I think we all find, um, you know, the buildings in real estate to be very interesting, as well as land and all those other things,
Mhm.
that come along. But, if you don't like the structures themselves, I don't think you'd be drawn to it. But
Yeah,
what the structures do, how they're built, and how they affect other people, it is a different field. There's no doubt about it. There is no doubt about it, for sure. So, how has it been now that you're back in Jamaica? Are you glad that you're back there? And you're on the same time zone now as me?
central.
Yeah,
So
that's weird.
it fluctuates based on daylight saving. So normally we're on Eastern, and then I'm not sure what part today. I know it just changed, I think last week, but now we're on Central Time. So yeah, no, being back's been great. It's been absolutely amazing. Family, friends, everyone's here. Or most people are here. Still have friends overseas, but yeah, it's just opening my eyes to just how much can be done here and just how much needs to be done here. Um, I feel like I'm a pretty hard worker. Like lots of
I would
times
say so.
work ends up being like personal and business. I have a hard time separating the two. But it just feels different. Like it doesn't feel like work per se. It's just like I'm here on the weekends, and I don't know. I don't know how to explain it, but I definitely feel like this is the most hours in a sense I've been putting into any one thing, which is fun. There
I
are
think a lot of
challenges.
us, yeah, there are a lot of us in Sub 2 that feel that way.
Yeah,
If you weren't enjoying it, you wouldn't put in that kind of effort, for sure.
yeah,
And the people that we meet along the way that have the similar kind of focus, we get each other. We get each other. So
exactly.
we want to help each other and move along and progress. And we don't see it as much as work, but it does take time. I mean, as you know, when I'm with baby Samantha, I am not as productive, uh, but I love her very
Yeah,
much. Rory and I have, Zooms regularly. And if Samantha's here, she's right here in the usually in the crib because I can contain her a bit more. And she, you know, I think she knows Rory's voice.
She makes it known when it's time for us to hang up. She's like, okay, bye bye. Like no more.
Pie. He just starts doing the princess pie. Yep, that's true. That's true. And it is it's easier to get away, like not yeah, she pulls me away. There's no doubt about it. Even though I'm doing it for her and for her grandkids, it's still, I think, what we would say a joy. We say
Yeah.
it's a joy, and that is just the way that it's going to go. Um, and what about? Are you going to be going to the squat up?
No, I don't think I'm going to be able to make it. I was looking at a few options, but might not be able to. But I do want to start traveling again once things are a bit more stable, with the office and the operation. Because yeah, I do miss going to meetups. I remember I was always trying to make the effort to go to like the Florida meetup. So like there were a few in South Florida that were going on. I know there's more popping up. I was in Southwest Florida for a while and then Southeast Florida, so it was good to kind of see all the sub two members. Um, but yeah, the sense of community, man, like it's just I still remember like our mastermind where we met and just the bonds that you create at those in-person events. Even if it was years from now, like people who I remember meeting from that event, like it still feels like
Yep.
a really close family friend.
Yep.
So it's
Yep.
crazy how those work.
Yeah. And you don't, like there's so much that's going on then too, it can
Yeah.
be a bit difficult to remember everything. I was quite surprised when Luciano remembered and reminded me that he was grateful that I had extra paper and a pen because I gave him paper and pen. And when he said that,
Yeah,
I went right back to that moment. I was like, oh yeah, being in the teacher brain, I always carried extra stuff. And he was like, oh,
just
how
in
am I going to keep
case.
my notes? And I'm like, here. And didn't think anything about it. And here we are almost 2 years later. And he's reminding me. I'm like, oh, yeah, that's true. But yeah, we definitely have the minutia that comes in and it fills everything. So yeah, it makes a big difference if you can meet people in person. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah.
And yeah, and I hope I can get myself to Jamaica at some time, so that I can visit our office. And one
I've
day we're going to
been
have GEC up there
Yeah, I've been
as well.
saying that's where we're going to have annual meetings or quarterly meetings. So yeah, it's just I don't know. I'm extremely biased, obviously being Jamaican. I think this place is just perfect. But it's funny. I think when I was leaving Jamaica, you never really fully understand or appreciate what you have until you travel, right? So I remember when I just left, moved to New York, the first winter I experienced, I was just like, oh, okay. Now I understand why the tourists who come to visit Jamaica are always so happy and think this place is like paradise. Like it really is something special. Being here, the food, the culture, the people, just
Don't
yeah,
forget the music.
yeah, and the culture, like the music, right? So it's
Yep.
it's
Yep.
it's definitely something that helps to keep me motivated, keep me pushing. Just being here and experiencing it. So yeah,
It must
it's
have been
been
a bit
really
tough
fun.
to go through winter in New York as a
Yeah,
Jamaican the first.
it wasn't fun. It was not fun. And I was taking the train a lot, so I'd have to go, on the bus and then the train and all these like I was commuting like 2 hours each way every day. So it was just like
Oh my gosh.
bus to train to train to train and so I wasn't the biggest fan of I like to go to New York just to visit, but I wasn't too crazy about living there. But yeah, I like space. I like just being able to go home and unplug, not being part of the hustle and bustle 24/7. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. There's so many people in New York. Space is at a premium.
yeah. I
And
see Josh's comment. That's why everyone's grumpy. I agree.
yeah, yeah,
Need
yeah,
more
yeah.
beaches. That's the
That's
solution.
right. And warmth and warmth.
Yeah,
because here in Chicagoland, it's freaking cold too. I think in some ways it's worse than New York. It's got that,
The wind.
yeah.
Yeah.
Do you know the other day they had such a bad wind, and I was like, "What the heck?" I felt really cold, and I looked, and my front door was open. I was like, "Okay, that's a problem," because I was under the impression it was locked. And that door is difficult to lock. There's no doubt about it. And it had been locked, but somehow it actually opened. I was like, that's dangerous. you know, I really wasn't happy about that. But, anyways, um, yeah, it is the sort of thing that I can do without. I won't miss it. I won't miss that cold and the wind. That's for sure. Yep. And when you have children down the road, are you thinking of, having them, if they say, I'm going to go to the States, I want to go to the States, are you going to be okay with it? Or,
Yeah,
or
well,
Canada?
yeah, so I definitely want them. First of all, I think it was good to leave and come back. I think traveling, even if you're American, one thing I always recommend to anyone who ever asks for advice on just like travel. When you're able to go and experience different cultures, you come up with this completely different way of viewing problems and coming up with solutions. So in my case, like I was able to go live in the US and Canada, see how things were working, and then come back home and implement some of those strategies and be so far ahead of other entrepreneurs or business owners because of things that I learned overseas. To put a spin on that, as Americans, if they were to go travel to third world countries and see ways how they've done so, like I've heard lots of entrepreneurs in the US, like they go to Asian countries and they learn things about processes and just how to optimize things. So just being able to travel and experience those different cultures. So um, when we do have kids, yeah, I would definitely recommend they spend time overseas. But part of the vision for Jambus is just knowing that, hey, you have the option of leaving if you want to. Like, they shouldn't feel forced to go overseas for opportunities. The goal is that I should be able to be in a position, whether through Jambus, yeah, well, yeah, through Jambus, where they have those options to remain here in Jamaica, um, as well as their friends or whoever else they're associated with, where they have opportunities to find employment in Jamaica that pays them enough where they don't need to go overseas. Because we're part of a global economy, right? I think so many people here locally, they're still scared about engaging with, work from home or doing overseas jobs. It's just we're still conditioned to say, hey, we need to be in an office and we need to be working for a Jamaican company. So you don't
Oh,
find as many entrepreneurs or small business owners here locally. It's just like huge companies or family owned companies that have been handed down for generations. And then most people, they just go to work as employees.
that's interesting. Now, you might know the answer to this. I myself don't, obviously. The VAs that are in the Philippines, are they working from home?
Well, it depends. So some companies, they do require them to be in office. Some they'll allow you to, you can just hire somebody as like a freelancer where they'll work from their home. So it just depends. Usually, if you're going through a VA recruitment company, they usually have a physical office space that those employees have to go in to work from. But if you're going through a job board in the Philippines, you could find Filipino VAs who are working from home.
Mhm.
It's a similar situation here in Jamaica. There are pros and cons to both. One
Mhm.
advantage having an office space is that they can have, reliable internet connection. It's better for coaching, training, being hands-on. But if you have the willpower and the independence to kind of act on your own and, go out and seek business, then there's no reason why you necessarily need to be in an office. You can be working at home, finding the opportunities, and just
Interesting.
creating an income for yourself.
I think that even though Canadians and Americans had more remote working, especially in the tech fields prior to COVID, I think COVID really accelerated that for most
Mm,
people because businesses either went bankrupt, they just had to shut down, or they found workabouts. And the workabouts often were, how to get employees to still be able to do their work from home.
yeah.
So now I think we have even a bit of a reluctance to go back to the office.
Hmm.
But, and I think that when you get the discipline of saying, I'm going to be in my office, give me space, um, and get in the habit of it, it works. Even for me, I have that cat back there who usually I kick out in podcasts, but he's asleep and I decided not to do it today. But yeah, disruptions, must be minimized if you're working productively at home. And that can be new. It can be new and different. But I imagine during COVID in Jamaica, they probably had similar experiences
Oh
too, right?
yeah. Yeah, they had to. And I mean, even coming out of COVID, like there are some companies that were doing a hybrid model where, 2 days a week and stuff, but it's being phased out from what I understand. Like they're trying to get back to normal. And I think to your point, I think there's a fear from employers where they're saying, hey, they can't monitor what's being done, they can't gauge productivity, XYZ. And I think it's more a problem on the employer's side because one thing I've learned through, working with these different companies, especially in real estate over the years, is that you have to come up with your KPIs, the key performance indicators, right? So whether a staff member is working from home or in the office, the data that's being reported regarding their productivity, I can see and track that. So if I notice, cold calling, for example, there's 50 calls here when she's in the office, and there's 30 calls or 25 calls when she's working from home. I can say, hey, we need to address this because your calls are dropping when you're from home. So I think being able to monitor is something that needs to be implemented from the employer standpoint to give them that sense of security that things are actually being done.
Right, right, of course. So Sherry says that she would need your help.
Oh, in
Help me
Jamaica.
do deals. That's funny. So
Yeah.
actually, Sherry, we're not doing, at least on this end, Rory and I are doing deals in Florida. That's where our market is. Um, Rory is educating and helping people to do business in the States that are in um,
Mhm.
Jamaica.
I
But, heck,
I would
if you,
also say there's opportunities in Jamaica, Sherry, that I could connect you with people who are more. I'm still learning the local real estate market here locally, so there are opportunities, especially in the Airbnb short-term rental space. Jamaica's, top 25 tourist destination in the world, so there's lots of opportunities here. So if I don't know directly, I could, point you in the right direction for sure.
yeah, yeah, I think that Airbnb is a good business in Jamaica, from what I gather.
Yeah,
So that's
yeah.
that's a good thing to say for sure. And if you could look forward, let's say in 3 to 5 to 10 years, what would you like to hope for?
So 3 years, I would say stability within Jambest in terms of the operation, wholesaling, just I wouldn't say deal sourcing. I think that's a better way to put it because wholesaling is just one aspect of real estate investing. But I think really having a pretty good grasp on deal sourcing, whether it's residential or commercial, finding opportunities, I think is a good 3 year goal. 5 years looking to do more larger projects developments in the US as well as Jamaica.
Hmm.
And then 10 years, it's looking more outside of real estate space, of the real estate realm, like also other employment opportunities, whether it's through, VA services or creating offshoots that can help to employ Jamaicans. I would say it's that 10-year milestone, maybe even some private equity. So buying companies here locally and kind of turning them around. I still have a love for finance. Real estate's just so much more, but I still do appreciate finance, private equity, business development. That's still something I'm passionate about. So 10 years, I think, is a reasonable time frame to incorporate that. But time just wish there were more hours into the day.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. And it is, it's interesting. It's so cool to think that you don't have to have your own dream to be able to expand and prosper and help. Because as you and I know, we've talked about the fact that we want to be able to buy businesses together,
Yeah,
and we're not looking at our partnership as short term. We're looking at it as long term, and as a result, it's exciting to think of where you want to go because you're driving this boat. It's it has two of us, but it needs both of us, but I am so okay with that. Actually, I'm inspired because um, I don't have that need to help back home. Canada doesn't really, I mean, it's a great country. It doesn't need that kind of situation.
yeah,
And I'm not as connected to Greece as you are to Jamaica. So it's kind of exciting to meet someone who wants to do as much as you do, especially when you don't have to. It could be just about you. Um, but how cool is it that you're making it about more and that you're finding the wings to take different routes? I think that's awesome. I think that's awesome. And, I'm not really rich enough to be an angel investor, but boy, I think if somebody has enough money to be an angel investor, I think that would be such a cool thing to just sit there and go, where do I want to put my money? How do I want to,
yeah,
who do I want to give it help to grow their thing so that more good can be done? Because I just think that would be so much fun. It's been
yeah.
a heck of a fun ride so far. There are bumps and challenges, and technology can get in the way. All sorts of things can happen, but it's been a lot of fun so far, and I look forward to doing a heck of a lot more. And I want to say thank you for being who you are.
Oh, I appreciate that, Ify, and likewise. I think when as we got to know each other, I know it's been close to 2 years now, thereabout.
Mhm.
Yeah. So
Yep.
it's something that's been coming a long time coming. And I remember, after I moved back and I was sending you pictures and saying, hey, this is what's going on. And I remember even local friends who I knew for like years who approached me about partnerships and everything. And it took me some time to really think about what do I want in terms of a partner? What would I be looking for in terms of a partner? And I think the discussions that we have were just so insightful. And being on this journey now, it's been really fun, like having somebody to, brainstorm and when things go wrong or when things go right and just having ways to bounce ideas and stuff. So yeah, so
Yes,
much to
it
do.
is fun. It is fun.
So much
It's
to
not.
do. So
Yes, and the synergy is good too,
yeah,
right? And oh my God, guys, we had quite the challenge with all the ifs coming up with our operating agreement. It
yeah,
was kind of funny to think of all that, but we did try to do, and yet there are still ifs that you don't imagine. That's Yeah, it's interesting how it all works. Well, before we go, I would like to make sure that everyone knows that they could reach you. And this is Rory's email. If you wish to reach out to him via email, it's rory@jamvest.com.
mhm,
And of course, again, I encourage you guys to go ahead and follow him on Jamvester in on IG. And I'd like to say thank you very, very much for being here.
thanks for having me,
Thank you.
Effie.
Oh no, it's been my pleasure. Okay, so we shall. Oh wait, I've learned I gotta slow down at this point. Sorry, guys. All right, and oh hi, Christy. Good to see ya.
Thanks, Chrissy.
Thank you. Yes, I hope all of you, are fortunate enough to meet a Rory in your life,
And then
because
FA.
no, they'll be the Effie. They'll be, whatever they want. It's just so much fun to help other people and to grow together. So thank you very much for being here, and we shall see you next week. All right.